What if 2% of the global human population just vanished? This is the thought-provoking premise of HBO's The Leftovers. It's one of my favorite shows of all time, but in my opinion, it's also the most underrated, especially the pilot. A 7.9 on IMDb is a good score, but for an episode that will hook you in just 3 minutes, I think this is criminally low. So today, I'm analyzing the most underrated pilot in television history to prove it's actually a masterpiece that needs to be studied. I'm going to show you the branding genius of the world's weirdest cult, the most memorable side character I've ever seen, and why one specific scene at a pool still lives rent-free in my head to this day. But first, let's talk about the opening scene. The Leftovers doesn't waste any time with its opening scene. In just 3 minutes, we witness the inciting event of the entire series, the sudden departure. But it's the way they show it that makes this scene a masterpiece. We see the event through the eyes of a mother and her baby Sam. Now I need to talk about this baby because for the first 2 minutes of this show, Sam does not stop crying. It is genuinely annoying, but this is done for a reason. This constant annoyance forces you into the mother's mindset. She's juggling a phone call, her laundry, and a screaming baby. So you aren't just watching her stress, you are physically sharing it. But then something interesting happens. The mother very calmly manages to soothe her baby. And for a few brief seconds, Sam stops. But was it because of the mom or something else? If you look closely at Sam, he appears to see something. We don't see what it is, but for the first time in the episode, we get silence. But then, of course, soon Sam starts crying again. The mother closes her eyes as if she's trying to escape the situation. You can practically hear her thinking, "Please, I just need this baby to be quiet, but be careful what you wish for." She looks in the back seat and Sam is gone. And as the camera pans out, we realize he's not the only one. One interesting choice about this scene is that we never learn the mother's name. She shows up later in the series, but the script only refers to her as Sam's mom. To me, this was done for 2 reasons. First, it makes it easier for you to put yourself in the mom's shoes, to imagine what the sudden departure would feel like. It's the cruelest what-if scenario imaginable. A mother losing her child she was just frustrated with. Second, it highlights that the sudden departure was impersonal. We don't know the mom's backstory, so we aren't invested in her as a character. So when Sam is taken, we know there is no specific reason for it, which tells us that the universe doesn't care about the mom's backstory. The selections were random. I love this opening scene because not only does it make you want to keep watching, which any hook should, but it also creates a mystery that haunts the characters and the viewer for the next 28 episodes. So I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. But as good as it was, there were actually 3 specific things in the pilot that managed to top it, starting with the Guilty Remnant. The Guilty Remnant are the show's primary antagonists. They're a global nihilistic cult formed after the sudden departure. I don't know who their chief brand officer is, but they deserve a raise because you can tell someone is in the Guilty Remnant the second you see them, which is probably when they are mean mugging you outside your house. But this strong brand recognition is because of 3 specific trademarks, and the pilot expertly explains all 3 in a single 1-minute scene. 5 minutes in, we meet one of the main characters, Laurie. She wakes up and the very first thing she does before even standing up is light a cigarette. Trademark number 1 is constant chain smoking, which tells you a lot about the Guilty Remnant's mindset. It suggests a total lack of concern for the future, because why worry about lung cancer when the world already ended? Then the camera pulls back into a wide frame shot and we see Laurie's surrounding environment. Everything is white. The beds, the pillows, the sheets, the clothes. They even have white blackout curtains, which is hilarious. Bruh. No half measures. Trademark number 2 is the all-white uniforms. It's reflective of those who see it, it's haunting, and it makes them impossible to ignore. I love this scene because in just 1 minute we learn so much about the Guilty Remnant, all without a single word of dialogue, which is a great transition to their third trademark feature. They can't talk, so to communicate, they use notepads. Mrs. TV Guide always says my handwriting is terrible, so they would probably hate me. But why does the Guilty Remnant do all this? We are living reminders. That's their motto. They don't want people to forget and move on. They want to be a disturbing physical reminder of what everyone lost in the sudden departure. The smoking, the white clothes, the silence, it's all designed to help them stand out, to make you look at them and feel uncomfortable. The constraint of not being able to talk makes them so interesting and so memorable, which is the perfect example of show, don't tell writing. And leading the local chapter of Mapleton, New York is one of the best and most complex antagonists I've ever seen, Patty Levin. We meet her in the pilot, but season 2 is when she really shines. I won't spoil anything, but there's one scene with her I've watched way too many times. It's a 10 out of 10. The Guilty Remnant gives the pilot its visual identity, but there's another character who's even more interesting. He's my favorite side character of all time, Holy Wayne. How do you introduce a character who is so powerful they might be a prophet? You show the length people will go just to meet them. The first time we see Holy Wayne is 22 minutes into the pilot. At first glance, he's just a normal man in a chair. But by this point, the show has already convinced you he's someone of great importance. This is a masterclass in character introductions. It starts at the 7-minute mark with Tom. He's sitting in a van in a sketchy parking lot. A man climbs in, but it's not just anyone. It's a United States congressman. This looks like a drug deal. Tom takes a fat envelope of cash. He takes the man's phone, saying, "I promise you'll get it back once you've talked to him." He even forces the congressman to put on a blindfold. I love this scene because it builds up Holy Wayne so much before we even meet him. So by the time we do, we already know he has something valuable, something so valuable that a congressman would risk his career and safety just for a conversation with him. And it warrants putting all these security measures in place to protect it and to keep it a secret. All these little details give Wayne and the idea of him a mysterious aura. It builds the anticipation of meeting him for both the congressman and the viewer. But the show doesn't stop here. Next, we get a masterclass in acting on the drive to Wayne. The congressman is skeptical about this whole thing, so Tom assures him and says,
"You know, Mr. Wigton, you don't have to be such a dick. You're gonna forget you ever felt this way."
And I love what happens next. The congressman sarcastically asks,
"What way?"
Tom replies,
"Burdened."
In just one word, the tone of the congressman completely shifts, and he's at a loss for words. He looks at Tom in amazement, as if he just read his mind. Suddenly, the music kicks in. De Profundis by Max Richter. It has a certain mysticism about it, which signals that the congressman is finally starting to believe in Wayne's powers. Also, the title is Latin for Out of the Depths, which perfectly describes the change in the congressman, because his new belief in Wayne gives him hope that this might finally be the cure for his sorrow. But before we meet Wayne, the show adds one more layer of proof to Wayne's powers. When they arrive, it is a fortress, a compound in the middle of nowhere, with armed guards, walkie-talkies, and security dogs. This is the level of security you would expect for a cartel kingpin, which further drives home the point Wayne is an important person. The pilot doesn't show us Wayne's power yet, but it does show us the results. When the congressman is done with Wayne, he's laughing, he's light, he's unburdened. It's the perfect character introduction because it leaves you demanding to know, who is this man and is he the real deal? The pilot is full of mysterious figures like Wayne. But all of this, the inciting event, the cult, the prophet, it all leads to the emotional peak at the end of the episode, the pool scene. It's my favorite moment in the pilot and one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. To understand what makes the pool scene so powerful, you first have to analyze what comes before it, which is the careful and intentional buildup of the Garvey family. This starts right after the opening scene, 3 years after the sudden departure. We hear a scientist explain that only 2% of the world vanished. For context, that's 140 million people. It's a big number, sure, but statistically, the odds of losing someone in your immediate family are very small. The show hammers this point home with Kevin Garvey. He's the first person we see after the sudden departure, and he's out for a run, which is a very normal thing to do. This suggests that his family was unaffected by the sudden departure, and to his knowledge, this is true, but it's only half true, and in the next scenes, we see why. Next, we meet Laurie, Kevin's ex-wife who joined the Guilty Remnant. We meet Jill, Kevin's daughter who is struggling mentally in high school. And we meet Tom, Kevin's son who works for Holy Wayne. But what I loved about the pilot is it doesn't tell you that they're related yet. It waits. It slowly reveals this throughout the episode, which sets up a powerful reveal at the very end, which brings us to the pool scene. This is where the pilot moves into goated territory. It's the first time we hear my favorite piece of music in the entire series, and when you hear it, you know it's about to be an amazing scene. The title translates to "Grant Us Peace," which perfectly describes what's about to happen next. Throughout the pilot, we see the lives of Jill and Tom are not great. Tom works for a cult, is alone, and lives thousands of miles away from his family. Jill acts out in school and subjects herself to the most insane version of spin the bottle I have ever seen. But both kids put on a strong face and act like everything is okay. However, in the pool scene, we see Jill and Tom start to crack for the first time. Jill comes home to her dark, empty house, which seems symbolic of her broken family and how she really feels inside. She's looking at the family photo that was smashed by Kevin earlier in the episode. She pulls away the broken glass to reveal her mom's face and a time when her family was together and happy. She starts to cry, and it's painfully obvious she is not okay. As we watch this scene, the music swells and we hear its climax. It is epic. But then, the show interweaves scenes of her brother Tom. He's at Wayne's compound, alone by the pool. He jumps in the pool completely naked, as if trying to cleanse himself from his trauma. And as he floats at the bottom of the pool, he lets out a long, intense scream that is perfectly timed with the climax of the music. I love this scene for 4 reasons. First, it's a cool shot that's so memorable visually. Second, because of the raw emotion we see from Tom. And I love how Tom's scream is perfectly timed to and elevated by the amazing music from Max Richter. Third, it's a powerful ending to the pilot and a payoff to all the buildup that came before it. And it's interesting because even though we know none of the Garvey family departed, it's still very clear that they've all been affected. And their happy family as they once knew it is gone. And fourth, there's so much symbolism. The darkness that surrounds Tom as he sits in the deep end of the pool, which is visually contrasted with the light from above failing to reach him. Tom's isolation, the blue color from the water, him screaming at the top of his lungs, crying out for help, but no one can hear him. And the sad thought that this is the only place Tom can let out his true emotions. It's a haunting but beautiful end to the pilot that I think most people underappreciate. The Leftovers is a show you will probably either love or hate. You might think it's pretentious and too confusing, or that it's the greatest show you've ever seen. In case you couldn't tell, I think it's a masterpiece. But Mrs. TV Guide, on the other hand, was not as big of a fan. And that's what's weird about the pilot. Because if you look back at the original Reddit thread from 2014 discussing the pilot, the consensus was people were confused but intrigued. And initially, that's how I felt too. But it wasn't until my second time watching that I liked it a lot more. I'm glad I kept watching because it became one of my favorite shows of all time. If it's your first time watching, don't judge the show by the pilot alone. My official TV Guide recommendation is to give it 3 episodes. Episode 3 is widely considered a great episode. So if you still aren't hooked after that, then the show probably isn't for you. But if you're looking for a thought-provoking show that has amazing writing, plenty of mysteries, emotional payoffs, and themes of faith, grief, and the search for meaning, give give The Leftovers a chance. And if you're still watching, go watch another one of my videos. YouTube thinks you'll like the video on the screen right now.